Hey, what's up, everybody? Justin Longardner here with Century 21, sitting with Tyler Davis.
Linder here in Fort Wayne.
So this morning, and I don't want to get this whole conversation about being negative or anything, but I think it's a real market shifting again.
Yep.
And people don't really want to actually say, hey, like, we are in the shift, we're shifting, something's happening. I can tell you right now, something is happening differently than what has been just in the last couple weeks. So this morning, I looked at the market in all of Allen County, looking at typical first-time home buyer homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, under 250,000. We had a total whopping of 37 listings.
Yeah, and that's wild in comparison to how many people are pre-approved out there looking to make those their home.
Yeah, well, and that's a big factor I think that needs to be discussed. People need to understand why you're getting pre-approved and what that process looks like. And then add on to that a buyer consult with an agent that really gets them prepared for the expectations of where the market's at now.
Absolutely. Well, and because they might think they want the home that they contact you or their agent about, but if they don't have that buyer consult up front, there might be some pitfalls or there might be some things that they're unaware of that house might not really be the one.
I find that a lot, especially with first-time buyers.
Right.
They don't really know what they don't know yet.
Exactly. So it's not ignorance, it's just you don't know until you find out, but which is all the more reason why you want to speak with a professional.
Agreed. Yes, both agent and lending.
Correct.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times we get a phone call. Hey, I would like to go see this house. Zillow phone call comes in. Great, cool, let's go see it. And we get there, to find out they're not ready to buy, not even close ready to buy, which is okay. That gives us an opportunity to meet them, start figuring out what their needs are, get them over to a lender.
Yeah. And when you say they're not ready to buy, what does that usually look like? Like, how does that conversation usually go?
Well, when I start asking about, hey, who you currently pre-approved through, or what's your budget, and they're like, well, I want to spend this much money a month. Well, that's great, but have you had a commitment from somebody that says, I will give you this much money? Chances are probably not.
Right. And a lot of times I think that comes back to the same thing you said, that they don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
Just because they've called a couple lenders and maybe had a conversation, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's really been drilled down on.
Yeah.
They might not be as pre-approved as they think they are.
Yeah, and you see that more. I mean, I see the front line of them wanting a property.
Right.
You get that front line of the big picture of their financial, where they're at.
Right.
Financially, debts, credits, and a lot. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people here that aren't very in tune to that.
Well, and I mean there should be a class in high school, man, that talks about mortgage and credit and finance and all those things
It used to
leading
be
up to
life class. That's
right.
gone.
Right.
Yeah.
But now it's usually once you get in contact with a lender that is actually going to slow down a little bit and have this conversation about, hey, tell me about what your goals are.
Yep.
And tell me about your employment situation.
Yeah.
So what's your plan for the down payment?
Yeah.
And that conversation is unique.
Seller's going to pay it all.
Right. Yeah. In this competitive market, that's where, as a lender, and I've seen this with other lenders, sometimes a seller credit will just get added on to an estimate out of assumption.
Yep.
Which might make those numbers look better, but that's not realistic in this market, which what the lender may not realize they're doing is making your job harder.
Well, they're actually doing, yes, they are. Because at the end of the day, I got to explain to them why we're not going to be able to get that. And, it's hard for a buyer to understand, well, my lender said I can get a credit here.
Right.
Yes, but did they explain the market to you? Did they tell you that on this particular house there's 12 other offers? So taking those things all into consideration, that's a big.
Well, and that's where it's relational versus transactional. Some lenders, maybe even some agents, it's transactional.
Yeah.
That's where you got to have that human component to it, to where you're willing to slow down for a minute and realize, like, okay, we're dealing with these people's hopes and dreams.
Yep.
So, like, let's talk about all these things.
I'm a big fan. One of the things I like to do is a buyer consult. So just like in the lending world, your first step is pre-approval. It's getting with that potential borrower or that buyer and looking at their financial landscape, figuring out what their debts are, getting their finances in order, loading the mag, if you will, putting the bullets in, getting ready for that. My side of that is a very similar, different conversation. I like to do, like I said, the buyer consult. It's just a fancy word for a conversation. I like to sit down with them, figure out, what their family needs are, what their goals are, what they think their budget is. Hopefully we've already talked with the lender, and if we haven't, cool, but we'll get there.
Yep.
But, that gives me an opportunity to kind of set expectations, both, for the clients to me and vice versa. What can we expect from each other? Communication methods, all those other things that go into that. But that human component, like you talked about, so huge, because if you lose that, what are you really doing at the end of the day?
Right, we're people helping people.
Exactly.
That's what we are. And I think, at least a lot of times, I will see first-time home buyers hesitant to have the conversation because maybe their parents had a bad experience, or maybe they heard from somebody at work that had a terrible experience. But that doesn't make it a blanket statement that should cloud over our industry as a whole. That's why it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
Nobody's on the hook by calling their lender. When somebody calls me, I love hearing from you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are your goals?
You even signed the dotted line.
Well, no, and that's the thing. A lot of times I learn 80% of what I need to know or the direction this conversation needs to go based on just listening.
Absolutely.
Just listening. And, like you said, my goal as their lending partner is to make sure that there's a bullet in the chamber.
Yep.
Because the last thing you want to do is when you're out there, you've looked at 12 houses and number 13 is the one. You have to know that you're ready to fire.
Yeah.
You have to know.
So, and that takes me back to the consult that I do, right? I like to make sure that they understand what that means. So when they say, I want to make an offer, a lot of times, and there's a lot of agents out there great, I'm going to write it up, we'll send it to you. For me, and working for the government for years that I did, being in the military, sign this, you just sign whatever.
Right.
And I'm not okay with that. So that consult gives me a chance to go over a purchase agreement with the buyer, explain out what each part of that contract means, because it is a contract. You're not just making an offer.
Yeah.
You're entering into a contract.
Legal binding contract.
Legal binding contract, yes. So, having a conversation with buyers on hey, this is what this means, this term. That way, when we do find that 13th house, that's that one, we got their pre-approval letter. They know when I'm talking about earnest money, what does that entail? They know when I'm talking about inspections. They know what that entails. Purchase price and closing costs, and we start figuring those things out. Maybe we can get, maybe it's a property that we can try to get some closing costs on. How do we word that? How do we, make that make sense for both the seller and the buyer? At the end of the day, it's what it comes down to, right? Sellers want the highest net. Buyers want to be at the lowest.
Right.
Sometimes you just got to find that happy medium.
Yep.
And I think most transactions work a whole lot better when that's found anyway.
Yep. And the biggest key, in all things, is communication. But that's why it's so important when a buyer and or seller work with a team. And when I say a team, I'm talking about your agent partners and the two agents communicating amongst each other. And then the lenders all communicating as well. It can't be, well, I didn't know this and I know that. That's why it's so awesome when a relationship is established.
Yep.
And you know how to work. You know how to, you all move with the same energy.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you know what the goal is. The common goal is sitting at a closing table, handing over keys, smiles.
Yeah.
Happy. Does it always go that way?
Generally ends that way.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But again, I have found some of my best experiences have been through challenging transactions, which potentially don't ever reach that closing table. And my favorite thing is when nobody ever knows what happened behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Develop a good relationship, figure out how things worked out. Maybe there's things that could have been different, done differently, but
the theme in the transaction, and I always talk to my team about this, is how do we make this work? How do we make this
best
work?
mindset to have.
Right. And that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's it's got to be that way. And it starts with the buyer, and the seller. But for the buyer, that's why it's so important that whether the conversation would start with your realtor or with your lender, the conversation has to start.
Yeah.
But really, if you had to pick, which would you say they should call first?
Well, I'm biased because I'm an agent. I want them to call me so that I can get them to my preferred lenders.
I feel that.
When you work with a lender and you've worked with that same lender over and over, you just know the process. It just makes things work easier.
Right.
But I mean, taking a step back from my occupation, from buying my own homes in the past, I really wish I would have reached out to a realtor first and let them kind of guide me through that entire process. I mean, I like to hold my head up on that, the fact that if one-stop shop.
Yeah.
If you call me, I can get you to a lender that knows how to work with your particular situation. Maybe you're a VA client. Maybe you're, a USDA client. Maybe you don't know. But having that initial conversation with me, I can help say, hey, look, maybe look at these few programs, and then move along that way. But I'm there from the beginning to the end at that point, and I like that feeling. I like knowing that I helped this person from not knowing anything about how to buy a house to taking the keys at closing, honey pulling up in the car.
Right.
That's awesome.
Something I know about you is this dude will not just disappear. Like, he don't hand you the keys and shake your hand at closing, bring you a plant or a bottle of wine and be like, out.
No.
No, it really is. It's building a relationship.
100%.
Like, I know we can both talk to the fact that, like, the blessing of getting a text message of a little princess bedroom, like
yes.
And it couldn't have come at a better time. Like, it's just amazing how this works. This is rewarding in many ways.
Well, I mean, that's a topic for a whole nother video, a whole nother thing, just client relationship.
Right.
And when you actually are proceeding through this time, the transaction, if you will, with that mindset, that's completely different of just having a transactional mindset, just a business mindset. I'm not in this, of course I'm in this for money. I mean, this is how I feed my family, it's how I take care of my stuff.
Right.
I enjoy it. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot of other components.
It's
getting to know this family, helping this family out. And like I said, they start sending you pictures of, hey, look what we did the house this weekend or last weekend.
Yep.
What do you think I should do here? That's awesome.
Yep.
And then you develop that relationship over time and time again. And that's how you want to do this, right? Because my goal for business is, I don't want to be continuing to work with Zillow and getting online leads. I want my past clients to be able to say, hey, look, this guy took really good care of me. Him and his team are fantastic.
They're legit.
Yes.
They're the real deal.
Yes. Go with these guys, and they're gonna steer.
Well, and you're gonna talk to them just like people, too. Like, because it is a relationship. It's
100%.
not transactional. Like, could I sit here and talk about the CPI report and the jobs report and
I prefer you don't.
Why exactly?
Yeah.
I prefer I don't.
Yeah, thank you.
But that's because yes, I study that on a daily basis. I'm always watching analysts in the market and learning about this market because I have to make sure
of the trade.
Exactly. I have to study my craft. I have fallen in love with the process, which is the same thing that you've done. But it's all subjective. Like, I'll get a call at least once a week. Hey, what's your best rate? Well, tell me more about your situation. Like, and if you ever call a lender and they just spit out a rate, man, that's
a lot
scary.
Of factors there.
It's scary. There's a lot of things that go into that.
Yeah.
And the media, of course, right now says rates are high. Well, it's subjective. High compared to a couple years ago? Sure, it was an anomaly, man. It was, don't know if we'll ever see that again.
Yeah.
Historically, things are at a level pace.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's ebbs and flows of it, man. But it should never stop you from progressing forward in life if that's your goals.
Let's back it up a little bit, though. We talked about how I like to do my buyer consult and the importance of the pre-approval, especially with the market that we're in. And without trying to scare people, we're heading back to a tight market. It is what it is. Our inventory is low. We've picked up from what inventory is, but the rates aren't scaring everybody. So there's still a lot of buyers out there.
Yeah.
So what are the top 3 things you think that are the most important when a potential buyer calls you looking for a pre-approval?
One of my biggest questions is, hey, tell me about what your comfort zone is for a monthly mortgage payment that includes taxes and insurance.
Yep.
And I say that like Ricky Repeater, exactly the same every time, because I want to make sure that I mention that taxes and insurance, because a lot of times that will open up well, I was looking on Zillow and it said the payment would be this. Mm-hmm. And most of the time that's principal and interest only.
Yeah.
So that doesn't include an escrow account. And
Correct.
I'll say that word specifically and pause.
Mm-hmm.
What's an escrow account? Like, I'm glad you asked.
Yep.
Let's talk about that, because you got to know what your comfort zone is, because let's say you're approved for $500,000. It's amazing. do you want a $3,500 a month house payment?
Yeah.
If the answer is yes, amazing.
Yeah. Let's get it.
Let's get it.
Call me today.
Right. But if you don't, then let's talk about where that puts us at, so that you guys aren't spinning your wheels out there like looking at properties that might not be for them today.
Yep.
And I would say another thing that helps us both is, number two, people have to look at it as an investment in themselves. A lot of times we're having conversations about, well, I'm renting and, I don't know if I'm
I have
ready
this
for that.
conversation daily.
Like the interest rate on rent is 100%.
Yes.
That's just the facts. You are building someone else's wealth.
Yeah, you're paying another mortgage. It's just
Right.
not yours.
Exactly. So it's an investment in yourself, and especially in a market like we're seeing. Yes, it is tighter. Yes, it is more competitive, but the market analysis show that appreciation is going to continue.
That's one of the biggest. I don't mean to cut you off there,
Yeah.
but I keep telling people that the ones that want to back off from buying. Okay, well, what do you want to do then? You just continue to rent?
But what I want people to understand what that means is, like, let's say you took this same money that you were going to invest in this home and you just stuck it in your savings account that makes 0.1% of interest. There's no appreciation on that. You're taking this money and you're investing it in a home for yourself and your family, and you're building equity, and you are growing wealth
Yes.
because of the appreciation.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's a strong move for you financially for yourself and your future.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another big thing. And it's number three is just have the conversation. Like, take all the angst out of it, take all the concern, like, call some lenders and find somebody that you just connect with.
Yeah.
Like, you'll know. I mean, just like I'm sure you see this more than I do. When somebody walks in the front door and it's the one, you just get that feeling.
Always see it on the face.
Right. Like,
That's
you
how clients are.
just get a feeling.
Yep.
When my wife and I she didn't even want to go look at the house we live in now. And I picked her up after work and we walked in the front door and she's like, we're going to make an offer. No joke. And I was like, who are you?
All right, Kelly.
Yeah.
All right.
Right. But, I mean, that's just how it happens. So call your lenders, have those conversations, and make sure they don't just spit out a rate and say, hey, you ready to apply?
Yeah.
Just use your best judgment. Your gut tells you a lot of things.
Well, unfortunately, I think, there's a lot of people willing to write pre-approval out and send out a pre-approval, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've done their due diligence already. Doesn't mean they have their best interest in hand. So until you have that full-on conversation and somebody in depth, it's one of the best reasons I like working with you. And I tell this to my clients all the time before they even call you. Like, hey, this dude is going to explain all of this to you and tell you what these pieces mean, and to put together the product that you're ultimately going to end up with. And if you don't know, ask.
And a big reason for that is I was a processor for 6-7 years. So, and what that means in my world, I was on the operations side. I was on the back end. I was the one that watched the transactions and helped them coordinate behind the scenes. So I know what questions to ask up front to potentially get in front of any pitfalls that a buyer, because what I have come to understand and what I make sure my team understands is this is somebody's hopes and dreams, and this is protecting your paycheck. Like, it's not about the paycheck, but it is also my job, your lender's job, to make sure that they're protecting your paycheck.
Exactly.
And I had a mentor and friend tell me something that I always keep in mind. Like, it is my job to make sure we never cancel moving trucks.
Yeah.
That's it.
I appreciate that on our side.
Right. But that's how it's got to be.
Yeah.
And that's when everybody moves with the same energy, that's what you get.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having this conversation today.